world. At the very start of this video, we hear a weird noise for about half a second. Running this audio through a spectrogram, which is just a visual representation of audio, we get this. Look familiar? It looks just like Brixgoa, the entity from the previous video. This has some significance later on. We start with a player in a village and find out that their username is JavaKnight67. He doesn't seem to be the most experienced player, as evidenced by his lack of shift clicking and his constant talking to NPCs like they can hear him. It may seem like a minor detail, but it has some significance later on. As JavaKnight, who I will henceforth be referring to as Java, walks around the village, we see a random diamond appear in his inventory. At first, Java is confused, as anybody would be, but he quickly begins celebrating and puts the diamond in a chest. Java then leaves the village to go on a mining trip. He quickly finds a cave, and as he explores, he comes across a dungeon. He is extremely cautious around it, more evidence that he isn't a very experienced player. After mustering up the courage to go down, he opens the first chest and finds normal loot. Nothing out of the ordinary, at least not yet. But when he opens the second chest, he finds something weird. He finds a strange music disc that isn't in regular Minecraft, called -7. Immediately, we can match this to the title of the video, -7W7A, and the significance of the number -7 will come back later. He puts the disc in his inventory and leaves the cave. It's then that he sees a weird structure in the distance. He goes to it and finds a strange looking portal with a power source seemingly behind iron doors. He attempts to look into one of the iron doors, but whatever's inside seems to be censored in the editing. I think this wasn't on Java's screen because he doesn't seem to be surprised by it. So what could possibly be behind this iron door that Java can see and have no reaction to, yet we aren't supposed to see? Well, I have an answer, but it comes in a later video, the so-called sequel to this video called -7W7B. He explores some more and then tries to go into the portal, only for his screen to shake violently and for him to step back. It's clear by his confusion that he wasn't the one shaking his camera. He walks away and the video cuts to black. We see Java again, back at the village, and he uses his single diamond to make a jukebox, and he plays the strange music disc he found in the dungeon. The disc seems to be playing some kind of static. He stands still, looking down for about 30 seconds, much like the player who climbed the tower in the first video. When he begins moving again, he instantly kills his dog and begins killing the villagers and animals around him. Java seemed to love his dog from what we've seen. He doesn't seem like the kind of person to go on a massacre for no reason. It's clear Java is not in control anymore. Java, or whoever's controlling him, runs back out of the village and to the strange portal. This time he jumps in, the audio distorts, the screen cuts to black, and the video ends. This was the longest video in the series so far, and it continues with the trend of having a different player each episode. The first thing to mention is the diamond that Java got at the start of the video. Who gave him that diamond? I think it was Brixgoa from the last video. As we've seen from the spectrogram, Brixgoa is clearly involved in this video somehow, and is the only entity we know of so far that is capable of doing something like this. But there is another reason why I think it was Brixgoa that gave Java the diamond. Recall in the last video that Crow looted a mineshaft chest on the way to Brixgoa and found exactly one diamond. If my theory is correct, the diamond we see in -7W7A is the diamond that Crow found in -17W10A. So now that we know who gave Java the diamond, why exactly did Brixgoa do this? Well, it's obvious that he was given exactly one diamond so he could make a jukebox in order to play that strange music disc. The music disc that, when he played it, seemed to control him. So it's clear that Brixgoa intended for him to find the -7 music disc so he could play it. Another thing of note is the design of the disc itself. The animated black and red pattern looks eerily similar to the fractured mist block in episode 1. I think there has to be some kind of connection between the fractured mist and the -7 music disc. Both seem to corrupt what comes in contact with them. Think back to the doors and bells touching the mist going haywire, and now the disc controlling Java's mind. Even if in different ways, it seems both are meant to corrupt somehow. But back to whatever entity is actually responsible. It's clear that this entity wasn't friendly because the first thing it did when it had control was instantly kill Java's dog and everything around it. After its murder spree, the entity controlling Java went over to the portal and jumped in. It's clear that this evil entity wants people to go into this portal, but why? And more importantly, who is this entity? Is it the host? Is it Brixgoa? Maybe it's Archaic? Well, I think I have an answer, and I don't think it's Brixgoa. I think there is someone else that we can point to. Someone in the tags of the video. The tags for this video say the following: compressed rift, compressed static, entity 731, and Zenoro, and removed Herobrine again. These are names that we haven't heard yet. By the way, I got all these posts from a user called Bandito by you on the SnapShot Null subreddit, so props to them for finding these tags. They dive into their own theories for what these names could mean, and I agree with some of them, but not for others. Firstly, the compressed static and the compressed rift seem to be the thing powering the portal. That one I agree with, and it seems pretty obvious that that was what was intended. The post then goes on to say that Entity 731 could possibly be what was hiding behind the black box when Java looked through the iron door, but I disagree with this. Personally, I think Entity 731 is the one that took control of Java's mind. Because of the spectrogram at the start of the video, I initially thought that Brixcoa must have been the one on the disk, but as we'll later come to see, Brixcoa is definitely not the one trapped in the disks. We have evidence of this even from just the last video where Brixcoa had a physical form. So why would it be trapped in a disk? I don't think Brixcoa is responsible for controlling Java's mind directly. The reason I don't think it's the other name we saw in the tags, Zenoro, is because Zenoro is an entity that I believe comes back in a future upload. That and the music disk is called -7. The video is called -7W7A, so it would make sense that Entity 731 would be responsible here. Entity 731 might have also been the one telling the player to kill Brixcoa. It seems like a stretch, but it's the best answer we have so far. Firstly, the entity speaks in red text, much like the red color scheme on the -7 disk. One thing you have to understand about the series is that color is very important. It can be a direct predictor for who exactly is speaking, but that's not the only reason. Notice that when the red text entity begins to speak, it's only right after Brixcoa's 6th message, making the red text message the 7th one. And as we've seen before, 731 seems to only show up when the number 7 is involved. Combine this with the color scheme, and this makes me largely suspect that the red text entity is Entity 731. But why is 731 so scared of the host? Or why does it hate Brixcoa so much? We don't know for right now. Maybe it'll be uncovered later. Another thing about Entity 731 is that it might actually be responsible for the fractured mist we see in the first video. First of all, the fractured mist has a very similar color scheme to the -7 music disc, which we know contains Entity 731. But our second hint comes from the fact that when under the influence of entities, players seem to pause for a while being taken over. We saw it with Java, we will see it in the future, and we saw it with the player in the first video after they climbed the tower. So it's pretty safe to conclude that whenever we see someone pause, it means they're under the control of an entity. And based on the similarities between the -7 disk and the fractured mist, this entity is probably none other than Entity 731. But it doesn't end there when it comes to theories for this video. The interesting thing about the tags for this video is that they were updated not once, but twice. The first update says this: "Sorry if I took it too far, Java. I get a little excited from time to time. But does time really exist here?" It seems that whoever this speaker is, they are talking with Java inside the dimension the portal leads to. We have no idea who this speaker is. It could be Brixcoa, but it doesn't really sound like something Brixcoa would say, especially because Brixcoa seems to be a more evil force that wouldn't apologize, as evidenced by Java receiving the diamond that would directly lead to him being mind-controlled. It seems like this unknown person is taking responsibility for Brixcoa's actions. Could it be the host? Maybe Zenoro is the one saying this? Could it be 731 themselves? Or maybe it really is Brixcoa? There really isn't enough evidence to conclude for right now. The second change in the tags was a simple one, but it raises a lot of questions. Originally, Entity 731 and Zenoro were distinct, but in the edit they are combined to say Entity 731_Zenoro. This could possibly mean that Entity 731 and Zenoro are the same entity. That's what many people seem to have thought when this video came out, but I personally don't believe that's true. In fact, I think it's proof that they are the same kind of entity, but not the same entity at all, as we'll come to see from the later uploads. As far as I know, that was the last change to the tags in this particular video. This video and the tags raise a lot more questions than answers. Like, why does Entity 731 want Java to go into this portal? Why is it so hostile to other mobs? And what connection does it have with the fractured mist? Well, like I said earlier, there is a follow-up to -7W7A called -7W7B, and it was uploaded last in terms of the channel's order, so I'll go over it then. It might just give us the answers that we're looking for. But for now, let's have a look at the next video. The next video is titled -12W30A, or the 30th week of -2012. Something that's distinct about this title is that 12W30A is a real Mojang snapshot released on July 23rd, 2012. I looked through the changelogs to see if anything relating to the video or the series as a whole might have changed, but the snapshot didn't look like anything special. Maybe the video itself will give us some clues. The video starts with a long shot of some kind of underwater structure. It looks to be a funnel leading down off some kind of bridge, and this will be important later on. We cut to a player fishing. Again, their skin doesn't match anyone we've seen before. They go to their house, and just an odd little detail I feel I need to mention, isn't it kind of weird that their house is on stilts? Like they're protecting themselves from something that hunts on the desert floor. It could just be nothing and I'm overanalyzing, but just something to note. We never actually get the name of the player here, so we'll just call them Yellow because they have a yellow skin. Yellow goes back to their house, organizes some chests, and cooks some food, and then heads back outside to fish. This is when the first strange thing happens. There's a fish in the water, and when Yellow casts their rod on top of it, the fish falls deeper into the water. Like literally falls, not swimming, but falling, and it eventually rises back up. Weird, but it could just be a glitch or something. As the day draws to a close, Yellow goes back into their house and goes to sleep. We then see them wake up on a strange pier with no items and very low render distance. All around the pier, there are floating drowned, much like the floating villagers in the first episode. Yellow begins walking only to find part of the pier has been removed and placed off to the side. So they try to jump for it and there are invisible blocks. This is important because it confirms that whatever built this has some sort of creative power, using blocks only accessible by commands. As Yellow continues, the pier begins getting more corrupted, and we see what looks to be a wood log version of the fractured mist from the first video. The lights eventually disappear and it's just a straight path. Yellow begins to run down it for an amount of time that's unknown because there's a cut. When we get back, Yellow has made it to the end of the pier and finds a strange 2x2 hole leading into the water below, and jumps in. Yellow begins down some sort of water funnel, just like the one we saw at the start, and when their oxygen depletes, they survive. Almost like something is protecting them, like something wants them to be here. We find a room with several blue beds and Yellow goes to sleep in one. At the end, we see a chat message. 1 down, 16 more to go. And the video ends. This video seems to be a lot more related to the first one. The floating mobs, the presence of the fractured mist variant. There aren't a lot of allusions to any of the entities we've seen so far. But for now, we are left with a few questions. Namely, what is this underwater room? Well, for one, there are exactly 17 beds, and it seems to be hinted at by the last chat message that Yellow was the first one in here, and 16 more of the beds need to be occupied for something to happen. We don't know what yet. Also something to mention, at the very end of the video, we hear a slowed version of the song from the Minecraft OST called Dead Voxel, which is played whenever you go to the Nether. This could imply that whatever is happening here has something to do with other dimensions. And where have we seen other dimensions before? My theory is that these beds are a way of transporting players into the strange dimension that Java got trapped in, or at least some kind of dimension. Maybe the tags will give us a hint. The tags for this video are as follows. Added, Doc's Chamber Pocket, Defected Wood, Can Players Find Each Other in the Void, and Force Them Here. Easily the strangest tags we've seen so far. The Doc's Chamber Pocket likely refers to the entire Doc's dimension. The Defected Wood is probably just the fractured mist variant we see on the docks. The last two are where it gets tricky. Can players find each other in the void, and Force Them Here. These two tags are extremely interesting, and I kind of lost my mind over them for a while, because they seemingly contradict a working theory I've had for the entire series. And guess what? I only made the connections that are implied with these last two lines as I was ironing out the mistakes in the editing. I was done with this video, and these two lines forced me back in. These two lines literally broke everything I thought I knew about the series. It's that bad. And to find out how I absolutely lost my mind over 11 words, I invite you to stay until the point where I get into the various theories for the entire series. But for now, without the full picture, it isn't immediately clear why these two sentences are so earth-shattering for the conclusions we'll come to later. But rest assured, they indeed did make me want to jump out of my window for a couple of days. For now, let's get back to the video. Why this entity needs 17 people exactly, and why this new method of teleportation to the dimension comes in the form of sleeping in this underwater room isn't clear yet. But we still have 2 more videos to look at. Maybe we could find something there. The next video in particular answers a lot of questions from the video we just went over. The next video is titled -1914A, or the 14th week of -2019. And just like the last video, it's also a real Mojang snapshot, minus the negative of course. But unlike before, there is some significance to this being a real snapshot, which we'll see in the video. This entry is a little different from the others. We start in a village with a similar corruption to the village from the first video, only this time it has a darker shade of bluish green. We hear a background noise similar to what -7 sounded like in the third video, at least in the effect it has on the player. The player, who I will call Zombie given their skin, is holding 5 flowers, all just as corrupted as the blocks. They run around and deliver these flowers to various armor stands within the village, in what seems to be a hurry. All of the armor stands seem to be in houses, and one of the houses has a sign reading, "I love you mom, see you soon." Not sure what this means yet. Once they're done, they slowly walk over to a tree, go into F1, and stare at it for the remainder of the video, and it ends. While this video might seem simple at first, it runs much deeper than you may initially think. Even though it's the shortest, it's definitely the most controversial one, and has a lot of questions surrounding it. Firstly, 19W14A is an actual Minecraft snapshot. And while there isn't much evidence that the episode and the real snapshot are connected, there is one thing that's worth mentioning. The snapshot was for the, at the time, upcoming Village and Pillage update, and out of the 102 things mentioned, 18 of them were village related in some way, nearly a fifth. And of course, the entire video takes place in a village. Just something I thought I needed to mention before we continue. The first and probably most important thing is the fact that the strange music we hear is directional. More specifically, it's in the ravine that runs through the village. This holds a lot of significance because it implies that it's being played out of a jukebox. The sporadic movements of the zombie player seem to hint that it's under the control of an entity, much like Java was, meaning that this is another music disc, probably called -19 or something, given the name of the first one. It's at this point where we can bring back another name, Zenoro. We concluded that Entity 731 was the one controlling Java with the -7 music disc. The hints for Zombie being controlled by an entity are all there. The Fractured Mist variant we see all over the village, the fact that at the very end, much like Java and the player in the first video, the zombie player pauses for a while, which indicates that they are indeed under the control of an entity. And the fact that the strange audio is coming from a music disc somewhere acts as even more evidence. This isn't Entity 731 because of the lack of the number 7 and its color scheme not being shown anywhere. I instead believe that this is Zenoro because the tag changes in the third video related Zenoro to Entity 731 by removing the and instead putting an underline, meaning they likely have similar characteristics and are a similar type of entity. And we see parallels between Java and the zombie player too, like them both being controlled by audio through music discs. So we know who the entity is, but who exactly is the zombie player? Well, a lot of people have theories. Some say it's a player just like the rest, others say this video could take place in some kind of afterlife, making the zombie player some kind of ghost, and others doubt that this is even a player and instead some sort of entity. It's hard to blame people for their mixed opinions because this video seemed to have come out of nowhere in terms of the plot. So who is the zombie? Well, I actually have a theory of my own, and it's something nobody on the subreddit seemed to notice. I think Yellow and Zombie are somehow connected. Not just that, I think they are the same player. My first reason is that they're both playing on peaceful difficulty, as evidenced by their lack of hunger degradation while running. But peaceful mode wasn't exactly unique to these two players. Java from the third video was also playing on peaceful mode, so that kind of throws things off. So this by itself isn't why I think Yellow and the zombie player are connected. I think they're connected because of a very subtle hint that it seemed nobody else noticed. Take a look again at Yellow's gameplay. Now zombies. Notice something? Look at their hotbars. More specifically, look at their level of XP. They're identical. I don't believe this is a coincidence, it's just too perfect. So allow me to change my theory from earlier. I think what ended up happening to Yellow was that upon going to sleep in the underwater room, something happened that turned him into some undead life form that went around giving flowers to these armor stands. But this all begs the question, why? Why would whoever sent the chat message at the end of the last video want Yellow to do this? Well, let's look at the tags of the video. Maybe they'll tell us more about why the zombie player is doing this. The tags of the video are the following: added diminished flower, fractured influence, diminish the influence, who, Boron plays, Daisy X Brittle, Vix Goat, MC Lover Girl 333, Moscoon, and where. It's a lot to gather and pretty confusing, so let's break it down. The diminished flower is just the flower the zombie was giving to the armor stands, and we can assume the fractured influence are the fractured mist variant blocks we see everywhere. This is where things get confusing though. What's with the list of names? What does diminish the influence mean? Well, one thing this could mean is that these lists of names are actually the names of people who, much like Java, have been affected by entities. And in order to diminish the influence of these entities, the zombie needed to hand out the diminished flowers. Notice how each armor stand corresponds to a username. 5 users, 5 armor stands. But that begs the question, why exactly is Zenoro trying to diminish the influence of entities when it itself seems to be an entity?
With Chase, you can get a debit card for your kids' independence and parental notifications, so you can keep an eye on how they're using it.
Still on budget.
Control for parents, freedom for kids. That's family banking from Chase.
When two great things combine, it's a wonderful world. Nerds Gummy Clusters. Unleash your senses.
Stop dreaming, start booking. Your next trip is just a deal away on Priceline. Priceline.
You know Harbor Freight for affordability, but durability goes right along with it. You see, we test, and then we test again.
Sometimes you just need a moment. Self-care.
Well, first of all, Zenoro seems to be the most friendly and positive entity out of them all. Unlike Entity 731, it never attacked anything, and it never put the zombie player it was possessing in harm's way, or even damaged it until it was done handing out flowers. And it didn't trick the zombie into going into a strange dimension. Instead, it just left it there peacefully to look at a tree. It could be one reason it's actively diminishing the influence of other entities. It's a benevolent one. It uses its powers to stop the other entities. Why Zenoro would do this is unclear. The only thing I can think of is that this video was meant to have a continuation. Much like the upcoming video -7W7B is a continuation of -7W7A. I think maybe the entire series was initially supposed to revolve around the conflict between Zenoro and the other entities. A war of sorts. Had the videos not been deleted, maybe we would have found out Zenoro's motives, why it's at war with some of the other entities, but we never will. It does answer another question though. What exactly was happening in -12 and why? Zenoro needs players to give diminished flowers to armor stands and needs exactly 17 of them because that's how many beds there are. That's why Zenoro lured the -12 player to the beds, to make them wake up in this weird dream state, control them, and then make them give these diminished flowers to other players, or in this case armor stands, in order to diminish the influence of other entities. It's a lot to take in, and it isn't relevant to any of the current videos and was probably meant to be for a future upload. But regardless, it's still a very lore-heavy video. But where does the host fit into all of this? And what exactly was that strange dimension in the third video? Well, there is one last video, and it's by far the most important one, and maybe this one will finally put a bow on the entire mystery. The final and longest video is titled -7W7B. A clear reference to the third video, -7W7A, and the first video I found in my research for SnapShot Null. The video starts with a strange noise with even stranger visuals. It's the exact same way -7W7A started, some strange noise that, when ran through a spectrogram, gave us really useful information. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot of information on the subreddit about this specific video, because it looks like the channel disappeared shortly after, and the subreddit's attention diverted to that. But let's deal with the audio in the theory section, and there are a lot of theories. But for now, let's run through the very basic plot of this video. The video starts with a player traveling through a corrupted version of the -7W7A world. I'll call this guy Green because we never learn his username. Green seems to be another traveler in the connected worlds of these null snapshots, much like the people who left signs in the first video. Immediately we can notice a few things here. For one, the world is obviously corrupted in some way. There are random chunks raised up into the sky, and the sun seems to be flickering from a state of rising and setting. Green eventually stumbles across the village -7W7A took place in, but this time the chunks are corrupted, and villagers are floating in the air. He finds a mineshaft in one of the lifted chunks and opens a chest. In it, there are 2 books. The first one says the following: "Saw a kid running around spazzing his head and killing villagers. The most edgy crap I've ever seen, almost laughable. Kids do the strangest things." Obviously, this page is talking about Java. There seems to have been a witness to when the entity took him over, likely another player like Green in these connected worlds. The second book is a bit more interesting. It reads, "I think the kids are gonna be alright. I know we've had to come back once or twice. Why are you looking at me so surprised? Weird." And I'll discuss what this book could mean in the theory section. Green continues and finds Java's house with the jukebox still intact. He clicks it and finds that the -7 music disc is still inside. He plays it and stands there while it plays, until he takes it out. It looks like Green won the fight against the entity somehow. We can conclude from this that Green is more experienced than Java, and maybe knows more about this entire thing than what he's letting on, which is hinted at later, but let's continue. He walks out and a diamond pops into his inventory in the same exact place it popped into Java's. He continues anyway. A small thing to note, but while walking, the setting sun that has been moving positions appears behind Green instead of directly in front of him like it had been, and is now rising. A strange detail, but nothing that seems super significant, at least for now. Green continues and eventually finds the portal Java entered. The surrounding area has been stripped of its leaves, and the grass has been turned to dirt. Weirdly, Green doesn't seem to be confused. More evidence that he knows a lot more about what's going on than Java. The portal itself is broken, and only one of the compressed rifts is pointing at the portal. For whatever reason, the right part of the tower has been destroyed, and we're able to see what's behind the iron door, the thing that was censored in -7W7A. This pattern of flickering gibberish actually holds a secret though, and we'll look at it in the theory section, but for now, let's continue. The compressed static then leads somewhere in the distance. Green walks over to it and finds a hole in a mountain that leads to an end crystal surrounded by fractured blocks. There appear to be fragments of the portal here, and Green jumps into one of them. Green ends up in a strange dimension, composed of fractured blocks and portal fragments. There are a few interesting things to note. Notice how his XP has changed from 18 to 17,016. Further evidence that we should pay attention to the XP count, which gives us even more proof in favor of Yellow being the zombie player. Another thing is that Green's stuff has completely disappeared, and all that's left is the -7 music disc. His hunger is also full when it was slightly empty earlier. Green walks around and finds stuff on the floor, but pay closer attention to the stuff. The sword, the pickaxe, the stone axe, the pork chops. This is the exact inventory Java had with him when he entered the dimension, and he somehow died here. But there are a few weird things here. For one, Java never had a creeper head in his inventory, and yet it's here with all his other stuff. The creeper head is also slightly farther away than Java's other stuff. Maybe someone else was here and also died, but with only a creeper head, it seems unlikely. Another strange thing, Green's inventory was wiped as soon as he entered the dimension, besides for the music disc of course. So why was Java able to keep his stuff when Green couldn't? Also, for whatever reason, Green can't pick up Java's stuff. Strange. Green then walks into this wooden room at the end of a hallway. It has green beds stacked and a fence gate is heard opening and closing again, similar to the first video. And there are armor stands outside the window that seem to be spawning and falling over and over again. He goes back and continues down the hallway, only to find a miniature model of the end dimension. It's a strange detail, and I have some theories on why this is here because I think it holds more significance than it initially seems. But for now, let's move on. He continues down a hallway and makes it to a portal. The portal opens, revealing an end crystal on top of a set of stairs. Green walks up them, and all of a sudden, some kind of log appears in chat, and we see someone talking. Log? The MREC has been a slow process, but I can tell I'm making some progress. Once I finally create the perfect procedure, then maybe the host will let me use these instead of those stupid EC he keeps making me use. Those are such a pain. That's the end of the first log, but there's still another one. Log. Something very interesting happened today. A kid found one of my missing MR. He decided to play the record. I was going to stop him at first, but I was too curious to see how this half-baked record would go. Interesting results. He became half player, half entity. A very aggressive entity. I could tell that the kid in this entity had a struggle, but it seems the entity had vanquished him. Overall, this seems to prove that music records can be very reliable. I just need a better procedure. We get cut off by a loud noise. Green walks behind the staircase and finds a tunnel. He walks down it and finds a portal at the end. He begins running towards it, and as he's about to jump in, the portal shatters. We see a message in chat saying, "You are going nowhere," and the video ends. This is easily the most lore-filled video we've seen so far. There are a lot of theories that I and the community have, so let's start from the very beginning of the video. The first thing we see is a music disc, and we hear some strange audio, and I sadly haven't been able to decode this. There's no mention of this code in the SnapShot Null subreddit nor the Discord, probably because the channel was deleted shortly after, and people's focus diverted to that. But it could also be that this simply was never solved. I tried solving it myself. I ran the audio through a spectrogram like with -7a, but nothing came up. I tried bringing it up to relevant authority, still nothing. So I'll leave it to you viewers to attempt to solve this code for yourselves and see if maybe I'm missing something here. It was also at this point that I came into contact with one of the moderators of the old SnapShot Null subreddit named ZLD1. After some back and forth about what I was doing, she invited me to a group with many of the other people who attempted to solve SnapShot Null back in the day and officially reopened the investigation. I credit many of the corrections for mistakes made in this video to her and the sort of task force that was created to solve this 5-year-old mystery. Aside from that though, the first question we have to tackle is who exactly is Green? And why is he in the -7W7A world? Green seems to be someone who possesses some kind of knowledge superior to that of a regular Minecraft player. He seems to have information that he isn't telling us about, as evidenced by the fact he was able to remove the music disc before it corrupted him, something Java couldn't do. He also seemed to know exactly where he was going. Is it a coincidence that he walked exactly toward the portal? He didn't even seem surprised when he saw the portal. Who is this guy? Well, clearly we know these worlds are connected, so it's very possible that he's just an ordinary Minecraft player who just so happened to stumble across Java's house and the portal. But I don't really think that's true. I mean, he literally knew exactly where everything was. He clearly knows something that we don't. I'll get into who I think Green really is when I talk about the entire series later on. But for now, the tags might give us a hint. Here's what they say. Added static pocket. And some seem to perceive they are recording, while others are not very interested. I assume that static pocket is the name of the dimension that the -7b player in Java entered. But the second part is interesting. My best interpretation is that it means recording in a literal sense. These videos had to get on YouTube somehow, and it doesn't seem like each individual player is uploading their POVs to one channel. So I assume that someone else is recording their screens and then uploading them to YouTube. Someone like the host, for example, a person who is implied to be powerful in this world of null snapshots. Who or what the host is still unclear, and I think this is yet another thing that was supposed to be answered later until the videos were removed. Something also to mention would be the books that Green finds in the mineshaft chest. The first seems to be another traveler that just so happened to see Java's mine being taken over by the entity. The second book in the minecart is the weird one. I think the kids are gonna be alright. I know we've had to come back once or twice. Why are you looking at me so surprised? What does this mean? Well, our first piece of evidence as to what this could be was found on the SnapShot Null subreddit by user AssetNam. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. They found that this text lined up with the chorus from a song called Francis Street by Kid the Band. Initially, I had blown off Francis Street as yet another reference that didn't hold any significance. But I was very wrong. I think the chorus of this song gives us a framework that we can discern the entire series through. And I'll touch on why I think this later, because it more relates to the entire series and not just this singular video. For now though, remember how we were able to see the centered object from -7a and -7b, and how they seem to be a jumble of random symbols? Well, the symbols aren't random. Seasoned Minecraft players might recognize the symbols as the language used in the Minecraft enchantment table. But it's also the language used in Commander Keen, a game from the early 90s. The language itself is called the Standard Galactic Alphabet, and it actually has an English translation. Knowing this, I translated the characters and found the term arm o' war was repeated over and over again. That is, until ZLD1 corrected me and it actually says I am aware, which makes a lot more sense. It's interesting though. Who is aware? Could it be the entity controlling Java? Possibly Brixgoa? We don't know yet. But the nature of where the text was found and the logs that I'll get into in a second gives us a couple of hints about what this could be. Now to get to what's probably the biggest hint when it comes to lore, the ending logs. The first question is, who exactly wrote these? Well, by process of elimination, I assume that Brixgoa wrote the logs for multiple reasons. First of all, it's assumed that Brixgoa is a powerful entity. It has a physical form unlike the others, and it was able to send Crow Bowser to the Void in the second video. It can't be 731 or Zenoro because they already have their place in the story, and it can't be the host because the host is directly mentioned in the logs. And I doubt it's archaic just because we haven't been given enough information on them. If it's true that the log's author is Brixgoa, then that gives us a big hint about the third video. Remember when Java, who was being controlled by Entity 731, instantly ran to the portal? And how we see Java dead in -7b? Well, my theory is that 731 wanted to possess Java in order to attack Brixgoa, who, as we know from the logs, resides in this dimension. We already know that 731 hates Brixgoa, as evidenced from the text in the second video, and clearly 731 lost the fight as evidenced by Java's items being scattered everywhere. So that's why 731 had gone into the portal, to kill Brixgoa. Why 731 hates Brixgoa so much is still unknown and might have been the subject of later videos, but back to the logs themselves. We can gather that Brixgoa is clearly developing some new technology called an MREC. Brixgoa states that it had been using an EC previously. Going off the fact that end crystals have been a theme all throughout the series, we can assume that EC just stands for end crystals, and MREC stands for music record end crystals. Like I said, we've seen end crystals a bunch of times before, powering the portal, in the room of the strange dimension, etc. So it seems that end crystals are being utilized for something. We can assume based on the effects of the music record that end crystals are also used to trap other entities. I mean, think about it. End crystals are a very powerful force in regular Minecraft already. 4 of them can summon a dragon. Hitting one will explode it and kill any player around it instantly. It makes sense that a powerful object like that could hold something within it. And think about this. In -7a, we see Java look through an iron door and view something we can't see. I think what he sees here is an end crystal, because in -7b, we see the portal is connected to an end crystal in the distance. But what is left in place of the end crystal? An encoded message saying, I am aware. Music records and end crystals are being used to store entities like Entity 731, and whoever said I am aware is just another unnamed entity. Java seeing an end crystal also makes sense. It's why Java didn't react to it. He didn't know what it was storing. But somebody who was watching the video might have, so it was censored. This episode was a very weird one, and it was also very lore-filled. And it's also the last in the entire series. And those 6 videos are really all we have to go on. And I think what we've just discussed is the last major breakthrough we can make regarding the series itself. But we do have some theories. Throughout the video, I've described several theories relating to each video, and me and the task force wanted to have a main theory unifying everything. But since Snapshot Null is so convoluted, there were several things that we didn't agree on, so we decided to form 3 theories for the entire series. Theories that everyone agreed could be the case, but without further videos, and with the series as complicated as it is, this is all we have. Theory number 1, the reincarnation theory. I mentioned that one of the books in -7w7b was the chorus of a song called Francis Street. I initially blew the song off as yet another cute reference, much like the removed Herobrine tags, but I think the song holds much more significance than we initially realized. After listening to it a couple times and trying to connect what I could to Snapshot Null, something about the chorus in particular clicked for me. I think it's these 3 lines that sum up exactly what has happened in the story thus far. And if you don't believe me, let me explain. We know so far that the creator doesn't leave hints on accident. The 17 beds, the archaic signs, there are always subtle hints that, when put together, contribute to the overall story. And it's through Francis Street that I think I can put a lot of mysteries about the series to bed. It might sound crazy right now, but I think Green, who we see in -7b, is actually Java from -7a, either reincarnated or in some other form, but my theory is that the person we see in -7w7b is Java. Let me explain. Have a look at the first line of the chorus. I think the kids are gonna be alright. Java is the only one who has been called a kid so far in the series, but kids implies that there are multiple. Green is the only other person we've seen in the -7 world. I don't think it's a stretch to say that the song is referring to both of them. This immediately establishes a similarity between the two, that they are both kids. But the line that really convinces me is the next one. I know we've had to come back once or twice. First, we get a reference to a kid, in this case Java, and then the next line implies that this kid came back. Of course, Java doesn't come back. We know he's dead from the corpse on the ground, so how would Java come back? Maybe if he was somehow reincarnated, or his consciousness was transferred into Green. Green is the one that came back, but Green is Java. And the last line ties it all together. Why are you looking at me so surprised? Brixgoa, who is inhabiting the strange dimension, recognizes Green as Java and is obviously surprised that he came back. That's why he wouldn't let Green leave the dimension. Now, this on its own, I feel like, isn't enough to prove the reincarnation theory. But if we use the reincarnation theory as a lens to look at all of the events in the series, suddenly we get some clarity on a few things we were confused about before. One of the biggest questions I had earlier was, who is Green? How did he know his way around Java's village and the way to the portal? And why wasn't Green affected by the -7 music disc? Well, now it all makes sense. If Green is Java, then of course he knew where his house was. And the reason the music disc didn't take him over this time was because he already had experience fighting the entity off previously. The reason he walked over to the portal was because Java knows where it is, and I have even more evidence that relates to the other videos. After trapping Green, I assume Brixgoa, or whoever was there, got to testing exactly why, when under the influence of an entity, Java came back as another person. I feel as though the entities thought they could utilize this reincarnation, so they refined it, and tested once again the ability to reincarnate under the influence of entities with Yellow, who was led to the docks, then the bed where they slept, seemingly died, and came back reincarnated in -19 to deliver the flowers. But this time, Zenoro could actually control their actions because of the music disc featured in -19. And there are even more hints in -19. The -19 player has a zombie skin on. A zombie, obviously, is someone who died and came back to life. There have been themes of reincarnation in previous videos, and the inclusion of Francis Street is just too much to ignore. I suspect that had the channel continued, it would have gone even deeper into this idea that when players die under the influence of an entity, they tend to come back to life. This was a theory created by me, and there are some problems with it, admittedly. For one, what exactly do I mean by reincarnation? That was a huge hang-up for me. Is the player in real life dying and coming back to life? Is it just their in-game character? If it didn't affect the person in real life, then the stakes would be non-existent. They could just leave the game. But it also seems like SnapShot Null is only taking place on Minecraft and doesn't do anything to anyone in real life. ZLD1 then provided another equally convincing explanation for the line, I think the kids are gonna be alright. The kid is Java, and yes, in real life he's fine, just a bit spooked, but what happened in Minecraft didn't affect him. So with this theory, we're kind of at a crossroads. On the one hand, the events of SnapShot Null could be affecting people in real life. Maybe the discs don't just control their Minecraft characters, but also their real life minds. But it doesn't seem like that in many cases based on the hints the videos give us. It seems like the behavior of the entities are based in reality in several ways. None of the entities ever do things that aren't in the realm of what's possible in the game, and we get no clues that something is going on beyond Minecraft. Which means it's likely that the entities can only control Minecraft, which would completely destroy the stakes, because why doesn't the player just turn off their computer or something? ZLD1 attempted to explain this with a theory of her own, and the main theory she worked with since the start. Theory 2. The Entity Factory Theory. This theory is interesting because it goes into why all of this is happening in the first place. Sure, the reincarnation theory may explain some parts of what the videos means as a whole, but it never explains why the videos are the way they are. Like, why are there entities in the first place? This is what the Entity Factory theory attempts to explain. The basis for this theory is that around the time SnapShot Null was made, Minecraft was in its kind of dark ages, seeing much less players than it did before. The theory suggests that the creation and proliferation of these entities was intentional by the developers, sort of as a way to get people talking about Minecraft again. For one, notice how the sightings of entities by players seems to match up with supposed old sightings of Herobrine, and what he does to your world. The trees all missing leaves in -7b, random items being received in your inventory, strange chunk errors, the constant reference to Herobrine in the tags. I mean, the name is literally SnapShot Null. These are all creepy things people claimed happened in beta Minecraft. It could be that Mojang, or some private company they hired, is, for lack of a better term, manufacturing these entities and putting them in these null snapshots in order to make Minecraft more relevant, to draw the old players who used to hear stories about this stuff back into the game, and new players who are just interested. It also gives us a reason why we even see these videos in the first place. You might remember the tags in -7 that read, "Some seem to perceive they are recording, while others are not very interested." SnapShot Null as a YouTube channel doesn't seem to be run by the people who are posting videos on it, given the fact that it seems to be a new person every time, besides maybe a link between -12 and -19. I think the YouTube channel is owned by someone who is forcing these people to record and posting their sightings. But how could you force a screen recording without someone's consent? It doesn't make any sense. Unless this person had special access to Mojang code and these players' accounts. In this case, the host may be a person, someone who is directly in charge of this entity business. Or more likely, the host could be another entity, coded as a sort of leader for the other entities. An entity who records people's screens and posts them automatically onto a shared channel. A channel called SnapShot Null. It could also be why we see editing in these videos despite them supposedly being rudimentary Minecraft sightings. The host or whoever is behind this is editing things out they don't like or deem boring to derive engagement, like Java looking through the iron door and us seeing it censored on our end, or the -12 player's entire run to the docks being cut to make it shorter. It's a theory that may work in tandem with the reincarnation theory, providing an origin for these entities. In this way, the hosts might not care what the entities do to the players, only that they do something out of the ordinary and that something is recorded and posted. Whether these entities have free will or if all of these encounters are pre-planned is unknown, but given Zenoro seemingly attempting to diminish the control of entities, it seems that they were coded with a kind of free will, meaning what we see in the 6 videos might not be scripted, just random encounters with entities. It would also explain why all of this is happening only on Minecraft. The entities don't need to control real-life people, all they need is the footage from the game. Sure, there aren't stakes, but that doesn't really matter when it comes to the motive of the entities. They're just trying to spook people and drive engagement to Minecraft, not take people over. Had the series continued, we might have seen these entities that seem to have free will double-crossing their creators and attempting to control the minds of people in real life. But we have no evidence of this, and it's just one of my theories. The problem with the Entity Factory theory is that it's mostly just speculation. There isn't a lot of actual evidence within the series. Sure, there are references, but that's about all we have to go on. There is still one more theory though. A theory that I am personally very afraid of because it proves many points about the series we've established wrong if it were true. It's a theory that I personally came up with after making a few connections while editing this very video. I call it the Void Theory. This is the theory that drove me out of my mind, because despite everything seemingly going against it, it is still very hard to ignore, and it has to do with the tags of -12W30A, and 2 very subtle hints that ultimately lead to a confusing conclusion. First, the line, "Can players find each other in the void?" was one that I initially blew off. The concept of the Minecraft void never seemed to appear in the series, at least at first glance. There is exactly one other instance of the void in the 6 videos, and that is in -17W10A. When Crow Bowser dies shortly after Brixgoa leaves, we can see his death message for a split second. Crow Bowser fell out of the world. The only way to get this death message is by falling into the void, either under bedrock in both the overworld and the nether, or in the end. Either way, it's weird that this is the way Crow Bowser dies. He wasn't killed by anything. He clearly wasn't /killed with commands either, because that's not the death message that pops up. He was simply sent to the void. That was the first thing that connected -12 with -17, but the second thing put the final nail in the coffin. I always thought the fact that there were 17 beds was a coincidence, But with what we've uncovered already, I realize that it is much more likely to be a reference to -17W10A. It seems that the number 17 is tied to Brixcoa. Firstly, the name of the snapshot having the number 17 at the start, but secondly, because in -17, there are exactly 17 messages sent in chat starting from Brixcoa's first words, including the red text entity, all the way to the death message in chat. So the fact that there are 17 beds here likely isn't a coincidence, leading me to believe that this underwater room and the entirety of what we see in -12 is Brixcoa's doing. But this heavily contradicts the theory that the -12 player is the -19 player. My theory was that because the -12 player had the exact same amount of XP down to the pixel as the -19 player, they were connected. That somehow, when Yellow slept in the bed, they woke up undead as the zombie player. But if this is Brixcoa, it seems to be implied that these beds send people to the void, which disproves one of our biggest leads. But something even worse is our theory about Zenoro being the -19 entity. Zenoro's motives make sense if they were the one that set up the docks and led Yellow into the underwater room and to the -19 world. As we said, Zenoro seems to be trying to diminish the influence of entities like Brixcoa, but Brixcoa sending people to Zenoro to aid in diminishing itself doesn't make any sense. So we have to assume that either A, our theory that Zenoro is trying to diminish other entities is wrong, or B, there is no connection between -12 and -19. Do you see what's so frustrating here? The theory implies that the entity we see in -19 isn't even Zenoro in the first place, and instead Brixcoa. But if that's the case, that makes things a million times more confusing, because what is Brixcoa trying to do? It makes much more sense if this is Zenoro, but it also somehow doesn't? I don't think the theory that Zenoro is trying to diminish the influence of other entities is wrong, there's just too much evidence. But I also think that the XP bar being the same in -12 and -19 can't be a coincidence. Because we know that the XP bar hasn't been ignored before, why would they do so now? If Brixcoa is the docks entity, then it seems like we're being confronted with multiple impossibilities. I know these are likely intentional, the 2 mentions of the void connecting -17 to -12, and the 17 beds. There's no way that's an accident. But then we're led to assume that one of 2 foundational theories are wrong. We also have no idea why Brixcoa is attempting to apparently send 17 people to the void. Maybe it's to answer the question in the tags, can players find each other in the void? But there's still one more thing about the tags that makes me want to rip my hair out. What does this mean? Does it mean force players to the void, force them to the docks, to the underwater room? In -12, Yellow went to the underwater room and slept in a bed using his own free will. He wasn't forced at all. He just appeared on the docks and that's what he decided to do. So in the context of this video, what does force them here even mean? I assume it means force them to the docks, but if Brixcoa can force people to the docks entrance, then why can't it force them directly into the underwater room to speed up the process? So what do we make of all this information? Truth is, I don't have an answer. There are 2 versions of the story that both seem to be the correct interpretation, but contradict one another, like the Minecraft ARG equivalent of reconciling general relativity and quantum mechanics. It seems on this matter you sort of have to take your pick. Either you believe Brixcoa is the docks entity and is using the beds to send players to the void, meaning Yellow and Zombie can't be the same player, and -12 and -19 aren't connected at all, or alternatively, Yellow and Zombie are the same player, but Brixcoa is the one responsible for -19, which also doesn't make any sense. Or you believe that despite the evidence in favor of it, Brixcoa is not the docks entity, and you find the mountains of evidence that Yellow is Zombie and Zenoro is diminishing the influence of other entities more convincing. So this is less of a theory and more of a mindless rant. One way I could think of solving this paradox is that this problem would have been cleared up in a future video that was never made, but we'll never know. All 3 of these breakthroughs are nowhere near perfect, but they are the best explanations we have so far. Stepping away from the actual videos for a second, the reason I decided to cover SnapShot Null on this channel is because I thought it was special. It was a strange mystery with a story so convoluted that multiple people working on finding clues and answers on and off over nearly 5 years couldn't put together a story. It was literally the first of its kind and spawned a trend of much similar channels that came after. Channels that went on to garner much more attention than SnapShot Null ever did. Ever heard of Minecraft Alpha 1.0.16 versions? An ARG that got boatloads of attention and millions of views? Or how about Slots Available, which also got a lot of attention in the ARG community? It's been confirmed by the creators of these ARGs that SnapShot Null was a major inspiration. And of course, many ARGs are inspired by the ones I just mentioned. Snapshot Null in this way had sort of a knock-on effect on Minecraft ARGs as a whole. A lot of the genre has been shaped by Snapshot Null, even if in small ways, and yet barely anybody knows this missing 5-year-old ARG exists. This seems to be a good place to end our discussion, which is what I thought, but there was one question that remained unanswered, one detail that still nagged at me. What exactly happened to Snapshot Null? I mean, I've been talking this entire time about how not only did the owners stop uploading, they deleted everything, with only archives remaining. But the creator got rid of the videos in a weird way, starting with the channel's About section. I didn't mention this earlier because I didn't think it was too relevant, but the About section updated in a strange way. The first half was added when the channel was created, and the second half was added only when the second video came out. So it's weird that this was the first thing to go, and then the rest of the channel got deleted. This had me thinking that the channel's deletion might have been part of the story in some way, and maybe there was more to it. I kept digging. My search ended up taking me to the Discord server associated with the Snapshot Null subreddit. It was now under a different name and much bigger than the small Snapshot Null community that it initially sprouted from, but it had the same moderators. So now, it was time to try my luck and see if any of them remembered. I messaged one of the moderators and they told me that the reason the channel was deleted was a quote, well-kept secret and nobody really knows why anything regarding Snapshot Null happened. But they also told me that they weren't very knowledgeable in the subject and they pointed me to another moderator for more info on the topic, which is how I initially met ZLD1. I thanked them and continued following the breadcrumb trail that the creator of this ARG left for me all those years ago. I contacted ZLD1, and I got an answer to my question that I was honestly dreading. Of course, I wanted to know the truth, to finally close the book on all of this, and the last puzzle piece was to find out why the channel was deleted. But at the same time, there was a part of me that hoped it would be mysterious, that nobody I talked to knew anything about it, or there was some kind of big thing I was uncovering, or whatever. Of course, reality isn't usually like this. It's not a movie, and sometimes the answers you get are a bit underwhelming. Case in point, ZLD1's response. The creator had a creative crisis, and Snapshot Null wasn't something they were sure on continuing, and that's why it got deleted. Disappointing, but they kept going. The subreddit should have an AMA with the Snapshot Null creator. That was interesting. I had scouted the subreddit multiple times before, and I never saw an AMA post from the creator. I informed ZLD1 about this, and they sent this. A copy and paste message was apparently all that was left of the post. This is what it said. A while back, around the time Petscop ended, I was in a phase of watching ARGs around the internet and grew into the idea of making my very own ARG. The post continues. Funny thing was, I had no idea for a story and just decided to wing it as a joke. To my surprise, it gained a decent following, along with the creation of both a Reddit and Discord channel. I was totally winging it, but slowly made the story ideas as I went along with these videos. After making a few videos, I came to the conclusion that I just had no idea what I was doing and decided to abandon the project. Sorry for randomly disappearing. I was trying to forget about this for a while. I was definitely not surprised when I saw hate towards Snapshot Null. Some parts of this post surprised me. The entire story of Snapshot Null so far didn't seem like the work of someone who had no idea what they were doing. And what's this about hate towards Snapshot Null? In all my research, I never found any criticism, only praise. So I decided to dig even deeper. I wanted to hear from the creator themselves on why the channel was deleted, both for my own curiosity and because it seemed the Reddit AMA copy and paste that ZLD1 sent was incomplete. So now I had my goal, to find and ask the creator directly why the channel was deleted. Only problem, I and nobody else has any idea who created this. Seriously, there's no information on the subreddit or the Discord about who created Snapshot Null. So I was gonna have to do some digging. The first clue to finding the creator came in the form of the AMA itself. In it, there are 2 Reddit links that the post claimed led to the owner's posts about Snapshot Null on various ARG subreddits. There were 2 links total. I genuinely expected them not to work after all this time. I tried the first link and my suspicion was confirmed. The post seemed to have been deleted. Great. I tried the second link and still no dice. That's when I tried messing around with the URL. I had already deleted the parentheses the links had around them and that yielded nothing, but I then deleted a third parenthesis, one that I thought was part of the link, but appeared to be there by accident. Upon deleting it and typing up the URL again, there it was, a post from the creator on r/creepygaming. The post reads, I was looking for updates on Minecraft snapshots and ran into this strange Minecraft video. The title has -3W21A on it, which is a snapshot that doesn't exist. This is most likely fake, but it's still weird and interesting, with a now dead link to the original channel. There was nothing but praise for the video in the comments, again leading me to question who exactly was hating on Snapshot Null. But more importantly, I now had a name. The name of the owner, at least on Reddit. Their last post was 4 months ago. That didn't give me a lot of confidence, but at least it means they've used this account in the past year. I sent them a message on Reddit, not really expecting a response. Hello, I was wondering a few things about Snapshot Null, the ARG which I'm pretty sure you're the creator of. This is for an analysis video I'm doing on the ARG and what ended up happening to it. I know it's been 4 years by now, and sorry if this message is popping up out of the blue, but why exactly was the ARG eventually deleted, despite the majority of people loving it? If it was personal business or you just don't feel comfortable sharing, you don't have to. Just wanted to clear some things up on why exactly it was removed. Thanks in advance. And to my surprise, I got a response just a few days later. Hey, thanks for reaching out. I don't mind sharing a bit. I made Snapshot Null after being inspired by some ARG type stuff at the time, like Petscop, Minecraft creepypastas, mainly from Along Came Josh, etc. I was surprised at how much the channel exploded. It even got its own Discord server and subreddit. Unfortunately, I was a bit of an insecure person at the time. I remember I made one video that got a lot of criticism and for pretty good reason. It seemed like a good idea but was executed poorly. At the time, it made sense in my head, lore-wise, but it looked absolutely ridiculous. Haha. I remember being really embarrassed about it. There was even a pretty big YouTuber that saw the videos and didn't like them, which really got to me. That was pretty much the catalyst of leaving the project. Honestly, there's a part of me that regrets doing that. There was a lot of people who seemed to like what I made, and I wish I took that to heart and learned from it, instead of just abandoning it. I wish I was brave enough to just continue at the time, especially since I had some really neat ideas, despite basically winging it at first, haha. It wasn't until a couple of videos in that I started coming up with ideas for the story. I sometimes still think about it and even at one point thought about bringing it back. But I'm not sure if I will though. I've basically moved on now. I've learned quite a bit from the experience and I think it's a good lesson for others too. Honestly, if anyone likes the idea enough where they want to make their own thing out of it, I'd say go ahead. I would still like to make an ARG of some sort one day, but I don't think I'm ready for that yet. Thanks for reaching out. I think typing this out has given me some sort of closure I've needed. Good luck with that video and take care. And there it is. It seems after all of this, we can finally close the book on Snapshot Null for good. It seems that Snapshot Null was one of the first Minecraft ARGs ever created in the style we now know, and it was deleted mostly due to criticism, not lack of direction, because the creator made it pretty clear that they still had ideas for the series. And I do wish that it was continued, and if you want to make an ARG with a similar idea, well, you have the creator's permission. Snapshot Null was special to me. As I said earlier, new Minecraft ARGs pop up every day, and new ARG analysis videos pop up to analyze those ARGs. It's like a symbiotic relationship of sorts. I didn't feel the need to throw my hat in the Minecraft ARG ring because there were already so many videos about it, but Snapshot Null...
I aspire, chat. Truth on Snapshot, no, man.